we go. There she is. There she is. I love that lady. Oh, I meant to tell you, I don't know how to edit video, and I'm not going to learn. So
put on my best.
the video.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you post this to YouTube or something?
I put it on the Patreon, so only people on a certain level. So it was a request where I'm like, hey, what do y'all want? We want to see the actual. Okay, I can record it. I think I pay for that. So, and then it was in the subscription anyway. So I'll make sure let's do the thing. So,
great.
Here we go. Ben Kirby. Yes, not the other. We won't do for the.
Correct.
Yeah. We won't do the other. Ben, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. We finally did it. This has taken at least 2.5 years to make happen. And so, yeah, welcome to the show.
I mean, I begged and begged and begged, and you guys kept pushing me away, and it started to get real irritating, but finally I got through. So thanks for having me, Seth. This is finally I have reached the pinnacle. That is the Can I Say This at Church podcast. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pantheon. And so you're here. Yeah.
That's right.
Why not? And we've already set the tone at sarcasm level 17.
Great tone. Yeah.
I don't know what the level goes to, but sarcasm is my love language. My wife, sarcasm and dad jokes. And so, yeah. So
Absolutely.
Here we go.
Let's go.
Yeah. So when people say, hey, what are you? Like, why are you? How do you, what's the answer to that?
I've paid a lot of money for therapy to try to answer that very question. I am an author and a podcaster and I guess my publisher wants me to say I'm a cultural commentator of some kind by way of kind of luck and also ignorance through this Instagram account I have called PreachersNSneakers. And I didn't plan for this to be how my life was going to work out, but now I'm the Preachers and Sneakers guy is how a lot of people know me as, I guess, which could, I'm proud of it some days and not proud of it other days.
Are there things that you're contractually by your publisher not allowed to say about yourself? Is that how this works?
No. I'll say whatever. I'll hear from them, but
Kelly, I mean, they're good people. They're I have, by way of the podcast, I've developed some really good relationships with a lot of publishers. And like I love, I didn't know how that worked. I didn't know how that whole world worked.
Me either.
Yeah. And then, the weird thing is when you get a galley copy of a book that has no page numbers, which then makes it hard for me to take notes and ask questions to the people they want me to ask questions to. And I'm like, it's like right here.
Yeah. As if people know what a galley copy is. Like, I didn't know what that was.
I Googled it.
Why do y'all keep saying galleys, bro? We're not on a ship.
Yeah. I Googled it when I got one. And then I was like, oh,
what is this?
It's a manuscript. Why didn't you could have just said
easily described manuscript. Without using jargon.
Yeah. So I just want to set context for people not watching the video. Behind you is a plaque of the book that I think we're going to talk about. At least what is that? Like,
that's my publisher sent that to me. It was like a what's the day for when it,
like the birthday.
Yeah. When it releases, a release day gift. And, people that also see the video can see my amateur hour video setup going in and out of focus. But yeah, it's just the cover and it's like a plaque to say, all right, we sure hope you sell some books. But yeah, I thought it was a nice gesture.
Yeah. So yeah, I read your book in one sitting, which isn't always the case. But yeah, my wife and I, we flew to Arizona a few weeks ago and she's like, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm going to bring a book because we can't talk on the plane anyway, because it's freaking loud. Yep. Nothing pisses me off more than people yelling at each other on the plane, having a normal conversation.
So where are you from?
Yeah.
Where you headed?
Yeah. Though it was fun this time, there was a lady in front of me. She fit that whole thing into after we landed a taxi. So in that 7 minutes, they worked an entire thing through. It was really fun to listen to, actually. It was impressive. Wow. She had some good skills. So I read your book entirely in quick succession. So good. I want to set some context for people, though. What the heck is Preachers and Sneakers? Why does it matter? Because I think outside of this, and even inside this small subculture of Instagram and Christianity, I don't know that everyone will be aware of what that is. Right. Though the Twitter, the follower count, not the Twitter, the Instagram count would disagree with me. But as I've polled people, I'm talking to this person, and they're like, I don't know what that is. So what is that?
It feels good for my pride for sure. But it's there's a lot of people on the internet, so it doesn't surprise me by any means. Preachers and Sneakers is started as an Instagram account. Now it's, I guess, a network of social media accounts and a podcast that started with me reposting pictures of famous megachurch pastors and then putting the price tag of their clothing right next to that picture on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And just by doing that and writing a snarky, funny quip, I caused people to lose their minds and just basically implode, because for a long time, people that were fans or at least aware of the kind of modern mega church pastor culture just assumed that there was a lot of guys out there trying to dress hip and dress relevant. But then when I said, hey, did you know that these shoes are worth $1,200? People were frazzled. And that tension caused the account to grow pretty quickly. And so this is March of 2019 that I made a few posts and came up with the name, started the account. And within 4 weeks, I had 100,000 followers just doing that. And I didn't do ads. I didn't do hashtags or anything. I was just scrolling through Instagram, screenshotting some of these guys' pictures, using the layout app and putting a screenshot of the market price of the shoes and posting that. And it erupted for a while there. Like I got invited to go on the Today Show at first because it was going so viral crazy. And I didn't, because I had no idea what was going on and I had no grasp on what was happening.
I should have. Go back, would you?
Yes. Are you kidding me? But I think at the time, with the information that I had and how like uncertain all of it was, I think it was the wisest thing. It would have been kind of buying into the hype a bit and trying to just ride the publicity wave.
Yeah.
And that probably would have gone straight to my head and probably caused me to flame out earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait. You say earlier. Are you flaming out now? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's just inevitable, right?
I guess.
Yeah. Aren't we all?
Well, you build a brand and you give it to someone else, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Just give it away for free.
For free. Right? Yeah. Free. Definitely. That's the goal.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple quotes in your book that really struck me. And I don't know why, but the one that I keep coming back to, I literally wrote it on the inside of the book, is, and I want just, again, I like to set context here, is you write in here, once a Beebs pastor, always a Beebs pastor. I don't know where it is in the book, but it's in one of, it's definitely in the book. You'll have to Google the PDF. But yeah, no, there are some parts there where you make a good point and then you start like cascading into sarcasm. And those are my favorite parts. And I want to say once a Beebs pastor, always, I think you're probably talking about Carl Lentz, but probably it's okay.
But there's a lot of them in there.
So the overarching narrative of the show, not of the show, of the I don't want to say the Instagram account because that's not really what it is. That just happens to be the vehicle, just like whatever the download button is in the app that people are listening to. Like that's not what the thing is. Is what you're going after a prosperity gospel, or is it a waste of resources or something else?
Yeah, it's a little muddier than that because, so going back a bit, I'm not a theologian dude. I'm not super studied in terms of like how to do church right or how to govern congregations or anything. Like my background is I was in the Marines and then I worked at a property management company and then I was in business school getting my master's when this account blew up. And so I am a Christian, but didn't go to seminary. I didn't at the time, didn't have any real like agenda for being an activist for any of this kind of stuff. I just noticed a thing. I was into sneakers and it felt weird to me, and hundreds of thousands of other people felt weird about it too. But what it turned into was, and what basically led to the book, was that it caused all these deeper questions and tensions and arguments about how we do modern church today. Mm-hmm. And it's just like way deeper than the sneakers. Not because I didn't make it deeper. There was people out there that had already been talking about this thing, and somehow I was able to make a thing that everyone was able to point to and say, yeah, this is what has made me feel weird about church, or what's pissed me off about church, all that kind of stuff. And so the book is I talk about the prosperity gospel because the prosperity gospel is heinous to me, but then I also talk about a like motivation, self-help type feel good gospel that's very prevalent right now that I question the efficacy of. But then I also try to get people that are reading to audit their own lives instead of just pointing their fingers at other dudes and how they do church. Like there's a lot here. The subject matter is pretty messy and kind of forces you to audit yourself. And, it's not comfortable all the time, but it feels important.
Yeah. It's been, so I want to shift gears for just a quick second, because if not, it's going to escape me and I'll forget to do it. So it's been a while since I talked to somebody from Texas, or at least in Texas. And so there was historically, there are two things that are always in the show. One is, for some reason, my dog's ears. They're next to me now. They'll flap, and I'll pan it way down and leave it in there. But sometimes people email it. Was it at minute 13? It was. We did it. I move it around. So that's the first thing. But the second is, people from Texas, being that I'm from Texas, it matters. And honestly, Ben, the answer is big enough that I just hit stop recording. Something I don't actually, but I should. So is it Whataburger or In-N-Out Burger?
Ooh, I love both of those. And
I don't know.
I mean, I'm being from Louisiana. I don't think I get to have a legitimate vote one way or the other. I appreciate both. But I guess if I had to default, I would say Whataburger, because Whataburger has a few more options and they are delicioso.
Yeah. Yeah. It has nothing to do with the book, but it is something I try to work in when I talk to people, because it matters.
Spicy ketchup is a key option that Whataburger provides that no one else does.
Oh, so when we went to Arizona, going back, we drove past one. I didn't know that Whataburger was in Arizona. And my wife was like, "Do we really need to stop?" I was like, "We don't need to stop." And I didn't stop, because I've been married long enough to know that question was not a question. So you write in your book quite a bit about church being church and businesses being businesses, and that when the two conflate, it derails into having. And I think, honestly, the reason that, as I scroll through the Instagram post that you put on there, and I started going way back in the timeline, you gave people an avenue to point at something and go, "I've been trying to explain this." And there it is, right there. Like, right there it is.
And it was hard for people to counter it, because the facts were facts, and it's hard to argue against facts. Yeah. And that's what made people so. I had a lot of frustrated messages toward me, because it got people so riled up that somebody would point out a thing about their pastor, even though they knew deep down that it was a true fact that the shoes were worth $1,000, and that's all I had said. But yeah, it was shocking to me, because so many different groups of people found some value out of this thing that was born out of being naive in a lot of ways. Like, I didn't know anything about like New York City and Los Angeles churches. Like, I didn't know. In my first video I ever made, before I even started the account, I called Elevation Worship an LA worship band when they're in Charlotte. Like, I knew nothing. I knew about Texas. Yeah, Elevation. That's actually pretty catchy.
You're welcome.
I knew about Texas church world. I knew about Louisiana church world, but not about the full extent of how church was being done across the country. So I was very naive. But it was interesting. Very quickly, I realized, like, oh, atheists have something to say about this and feel a type of way about this. But at the same time, these like fundamentalist Christians also think that what I'm doing is helpful or good, but for completely different reasons. And so I'm like sitting in the middle, trying to say, is this good? Like, is what I'm doing good? Because, people with completely different beliefs than I really like what I'm doing. And then on the opposite end, they also like what I'm really like what I'm doing. But then there's this other set of Christians that really hate what I'm doing. So it was pretty tough to navigate early on.
Yeah. Is there, and again, you preface that you're not a theologian, you don't know how to run a church, but I'm still curious in your opinion on this. So at what level do you think the church needs to pivot away from being a business? And I say that as, my career is helping businesses grow. I've been on stewardship council at my church, and the church is legitimately a business 5.9 days a week. And then you sleep, and then you have church, and then you go back to doing it. Like, do you see a way, or have learned a way, or can think of a way that church should possibly operate differently, so that accounts like yours don't exist? But more importantly, that the just massive waste of wealth isn't a thing? Like what should that look like?
Yeah, and it's just like it's such a huge, deep-seated thing. Like the metrics of success for churches today are a lot of times born by increased attendance, which causes increased giving, which causes increased demand for all these different services and productions and staffs and real estate and all that kind of stuff. So like this is a huge deep-seated thing that I can't pretend to have like an overnight answer for.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wish churches would address it and like at least question, hey, is this the best? Why do we have to continue growing this building or have to continue, bringing in all these expensive guest speakers or putting on this huge conference that costs millions of dollars or this huge Christmas program that costs millions of dollars? Like, if we're honest with ourselves, is it really to further the mission of what Jesus calls us to do, or is it to grow our personal church brand or to just bring in new people, to bring in new tithe dollars? But also, like, the reality is churches run off of donations, and if donations are light, you got to figure out a way to keep the church going. So it's a very imperfect thing. But if you step back and look at a macro level, at least just in Texas, there's a whole lot of stuff we do at church and go through to put on church that just doesn't seem to matter in the long term. And if you just redeployed all of that energy and money into things that objectively helped people in the short term, or at least some in the short term, I think we would be better to at least, and maybe they are, like maybe these churches are having meetings where they're saying, hey, how can we get away from stuff that's self-serving and is more serving to the community and to the mission of Jesus? But all we have to see from the outside is their Instagram accounts. And the Instagram accounts make it seem like it's a freaking clown show, of which you can get pretty wealthy off that clown show. And so it's just like there's a lot there, and I just wish they would address it. Say, hey guys, we do have all these freaking, it's always easy to point to the smoke machines. Like the smoke machines probably aren't even that expensive, but like we do have all these smoke machines, and we got a great deal from this production company, pro bono, blah de blah. But like where does it stop? Like where, like
spinning globes, golden globes. That's where it
you
stops.
Can spend more. You can always spend more and more money on production, and I just want to get people to stop just for a second and say, hey, this seems like the ROI on this isn't exactly great. Like we're just doing this to have a great production for what? To appease the people that are going to come anyway. Like it's a very deep, complicated discussion. I've never run a church before, but as a layman, I'm also able to just say, hey guys, it's pretty bold face right here. It looks like you guys are running your church as a for-profit business. What's the deal with that?
Well, the Johnson Amendment, why not?
What is
familiar with it? So it's either the Johnson Amendment or the Johnson Act. That is the rule that allows churches to continue to be for-profit and claim to not have any political sway, power, or influence.
Oh, I need to look that up. I don't know why I haven't ever read that, because I looked into the 501c3 status, especially during the elections and stuff, because it was so, even just around here,
I think
pastors were like
Amendment.
getting on Fox News and saying Christians better vote for Trump, and I'm like, how do you, like, you should now not be a 501c3 if you're going to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but that church downtown there, that Baptist church downtown is absolutely beautiful. I've walked past it before. It's beautiful. Not naming any names.
As well.
I've been blocked by enough mega church pastors on social media. I'd rather not. Actually, I don't care.
As have I. I mean, real talk. As have I.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not blocked by Joel Osteen and Mark Driscoll and Jim Jeffries,
that's quite a stable.
Are you even not? I mean, well, what's weird
You're not
is
trying hard enough. If not,
I wasn't even trying at all. Actually, there was one time I only tweeted at Joel once. He proof texted a verse and ripped it out of context and then made it prosperity. I responded with, I just thought I would bring the full context to your sentence. The whole sentence reads this. How does that relate to the message? So I listened to that as well. Next thing you know, I hadn't seen Joel in months, and I'm like, oh, it's because I blocked. And then as I looked through it, I made it. So I have two accounts, one for the show and one for me, and only one is really active. And so I could go see what happened on the other. I'm like, oh,
that's what I do too.
That one was getting traction. apparently other people liked the question and block. But it wasn't intended to be passive aggressive. Like it was legitimately like
just supposed to be aggressive.
What are you doing, man?
Yeah.
This is not
and like that's what it almost feels like I'm being gaslit sometimes, because for that very reason, like there's so many people that claim to follow Jesus or claim to read their Bible or whatever that will basically gas up a tweet like that without even thinking for a second. It's like, hey, this doesn't, based on what I've read, this doesn't sound anything like what I know about the faith that I
Story
participate
does not check
in.
out. Yeah.
So it just makes me feel kind of crazy sometimes, because people aren't even willing to question for a second, like, hey, is that actually what that verse was supposed to mean?
Yeah. Can I get you to define a term that you've made a chapter? Just because my shoe game is Crocs and dress shoes. Like that's it. If I get Brooks, it's because, well, if I get Brooks, it's because my feet hurt and I wear one until they fall apart. And then my wife buys me another pair. And I don't even think that I can flex in Brooks. But you have a chapter called Registered Flex Offenders. And like you paint this history in the middle of your book of like this subprime market of buying and selling of shoes. Like what is a flex offender and like around sneakers? And like, because literally I read this and I read parts of it. I'm like, this is insane. Like what is this?
I stole the term. Some commenter much funnier than I came up with the term, and I have his name somewhere. But I thought it was so funny because this term flexing is basically posting on Instagram or in social media for people to think that you're impressive. And it's usually around having designer clothing or streetwear or whatever. In streetwear culture, flexing is basically wearing hype type clothing that's very, very overpriced for the, I guess, clout of being known that you can afford that kind of clothing.
Yeah.
And so the market, there's another chapter about just like the whole sneaker market, because a lot of people didn't realize this. But it's basically like arbitrage. There's such limited.
Is that a word or a brand?
Arbitrage is a word. It's a business word. Basically buying low and selling high.
It sounded fancy. I just wanted to make sure.
I figured you knew it. I figured bankers use that kind of terminology. But in the sneaker world, it's so hard to buy some of these pairs for retail that it drives the resale price up. So people will, if you're lucky enough, somehow either by a bot or by standing in line overnight or whatever, getting a pair of these sneakers at retail price, they can immediately go on one of these resale sites and charge 5x what they paid for it. And that in turn creates this kind of stock market of things. And so that's what creates a lot of these shoes being worth more than $160. They like a very limited pair of Yeezys or Jordans or whatever could easily go for $1,000 plus, which is hard for people to comprehend sometimes. But it's the same concept as like the real estate market or even the stock market. It's like the market determines what people are willing to buy and sell these shoes for.
Yeah. I want to give context to the thing. So I did not go to school to be a banker. I went to school. I became a banker because Sally Mae does not care what your job is and wants that money.
And she'll be there
accidentally
forever.
Got good at it. So I don't know what that word. I do know buy low, sell high. I did not know that it had a word, but it sounded fancy, like Gucci. Or,
see, like here would be a perfect example. I was trying to flex on you with my business acumen.
I'm going to try. I read this online. That's a weird flex, but okay. I don't know if that's the right context to use that.
Use. Yeah, weird. That is a weird flex.
So I do want to talk about this because you're in. So the school that I went to is Liberty, and that is an overtly political school, quote unquote. I think anyway. I've listened to Gangster Capitalism, and even my eyes have been open to some of that stuff. I don't know if you've listened to that.
I've heard the name. I haven't listened to it though.
Oh, I don't want to advertise another podcast, but people should pause and go listen to it. So there's a quote in here, and then so you say in here talking about woke worshipers and politicking pastors, but there's a quote in here you talk about that for a parishioner, like if you're my pastor, you're my pastor, but to a politician, pastors are just tools. What do you mean by that?
Well, pastors are incredible influencers. I mean, you have control in a way over people's spiritual lives. And so why wouldn't they look to you for advice and insight on who to vote for politically? It only makes sense that politicians would want to grab hold of all the influencers that they can in every single context to get votes. I mean, religious people are very vocal and very powerful in certain circles. And so I wrote the chapter because, we were living through it where candidates were using pastors basically as sounding boards or like campaign stops, where that turns church into something completely outside of what it was designed, or it is designed to do. And there were plenty of Christians that were completely fine with it. And I think I would seek my pastor for advice, even including political advice. Like, there's wisdom in seeking wise counsel for making decisions in life and who you should back when it's complicated, especially with like the last two candidates we had. I don't fault anybody for seeking advice, but using your platform that you built on the premise that you're going to lead people spiritually and then turning that into a political platform, bro, is a little gross to me. Like, you can, because it turned into not just like, hey, here's what Jesus is about. You need to vote in a way that would reflect best
conservative values. Yeah.
Right. Conservative values only.
I saw you dancing around it.
But no. I mean, it was very complicated for me. Like, it was very difficult for me. But then there were these pastors who represent large churches on Fox News saying the Christian choice, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, the Christian choice is Trump. And that is antithetical to the Bible and to the life of Jesus. Jesus never participated in any kind of partisan, from what I know, as a lay person, never participated in any kind of partisan politicking, which completely different context in the world. Like, there weren't Republicans and Democrats, but he was pointing people only to the one true God and not aligning these humans as the more chosen of God than the other. It just seemed gross to me, and I was trying to get that out in the chapter.
Yeah, can I read you a bit of your book to you? I don't know.
Are you about to counter everything I just said with my own words?
No.
Okay.
No. No. You also have a podcast, correct?
I do.
Yeah. So you know how hard it is to always kind of know what a question you want to go to.
Or you think about it and then they keep talking and then you forget it. Yeah.
No, I definitely don't, because I dog ear my pages. I'm that guy that beats my books.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels really good that you actually read the book. Plenty of people just read the one sheet and be like, all right, so how did the account start?
So I have, except for very few exceptions, if I talk to someone about a book, I've read every word in the book except for the back where you list all the sources, unless there's one specifically I'm like, that I want to read whatever that quote came from, wrapped in this. I want that book, which is where half of my library is.
That's like one of the harder things about writing a book is citing all that stuff correctly, because like there's a whole
Grammarly does that for you though, right? That's how the internet works. You just plug it in and it tells you where it comes from.
I basically did Grammarly I did it's called like Sight Machine or something, and I put it all in there, and of course the poor editor intern had to go through, she wasn't an intern, but like the poor hourly editor had to go through and like recorrect all this stuff. So like, I kind of felt bad about that. Anyways,
they have a job because of that. So
right, exactly. That's what they get paid to do, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's a part in here in Pursue Your Promised Purpose, which I can't help but think about Rick Warren, but I don't know that that's who you were going after there, but it doesn't really matter because he doesn't flex in this. He wears Hawaiian shirts on stage. So I've
talked with him a couple times on Instagram.
Really? Yeah, I don't like the purpose-driven life, but that's for different reasons. But you paint a picture of a church service where, the music starts out of nowhere. You're feeling it. You're lifting your hands along with the other anthropology models around you, which is hilarious. Is anthropology even still a store?
It is, yeah.
Oh, not here in Virginia.
My wife has spent plenty there.
And then, so it rolls on around and it says that these kinds of churches will probably stay away from pain, suffering, and sin and focus more on your purpose, your blessing, and getting through your anxiety and your depression. The pastors will talk about dating and your finances, your friendships and your careers, you, If they're smart, they'll juke away from gender roles, human depravity, sexual identity, and racism, and stay away from why you actually need a savior. And Heisman the fact that both pedophilia and lying to your spouse equally distance you from the love of God, and that only a faith in Jesus can guarantee an eternity with him. I just like the fact that you worked Heisman into there. That was fantastic use of that.
Thank you.
But I'd like you to kind of rip that apart a bit, because I honestly think that our churches teeter between those two dichotomies. You have I'm just going to name names.
Two extremes.
I'm going to name them all. So you have the Bethels and the Hillsongs and the whatever. And then you have the 17 people in a Bible believing church in the middle of nowhere, which I think could be fantastic, but they don't have any, you know what I mean? They don't have enough resources to really do a lot outside of just barely get by. Mm-hmm. But I'd like you to kind of rip apart like that context there, and then maybe give some nuance to that.
Yeah, that was me trying to point out that there's a lot of very successful ministries based on a style of preaching or gospel that makes you the hero, when in fact we, depending on, like, you and I don't know each other besides this conversation, so we may completely disagree, but by making us humans the hero, that basically minimizes our view of a God that we believe created everything. And you turn God into this genie or vending machine of which you put something in, faith, being prepared for your blessing, and your return is getting that blessing, which is just such a weak, small view of a being that you think created all of time and all of humanity. And so to me, like on one level, it feels disrespectful to me. Like, if you're going to believe in something so big and radical as that, treat it seriously, not as a spiritual guru that is going to get you through whatever your short-term issues are. But then lost my train of thought. Take it seriously, but also, I guess I was encouraging pastors and preachers to call their people to something, because oftentimes these sermons are good for being motivating and making you feel better in the short term. But if it never calls you to anything, it never challenges you in a way that is like tangible, then what is that? Like, how does that serve anybody other than just getting people to come back the next weekend? And so I was trying to characterize, it's exaggerating it a bit, because it's combining like the conferences and the weekly services into this kind of conglomeration of all those different elements, like the hype music, the hype speaker, all the beautiful people. It looks different for in all these different contexts, but there's a whole lot of churches out there that just stick with that, which can attract huge numbers. But my point is that I question how that serves people in the long run. I mean, in eternity, like if you deal in eternal terms, how does that help anybody if it's just like, hey, God's for you and he's going to get you that job promotion, bro? It just seems like if you believe in an actual God, you should expect way more from a being of that size and scope.
Yeah, no, I would agree with most of that. You're right. We don't know each other well, though. I come out to Texas frequently. Maybe I'll shoot you an Instagram message or something.
Please do.
And we'll figure it out. I fly into Dallas, wherever that airport is in relation to you. That's where I fly into.
Okay.
And then my brother usually comes to get me. So I do have a couple just really sarcastic questions, just because I can't get them out of my head, and it's going to frustrate me if I don't get them out. So
most people do. Yeah.
If we brought back liturgical robes, would there be a Preachers and Sneakers account?
No, I don't think so. But also, people wouldn't go to those churches. Like that's the rub. Like I get it. Like the reason we got away from that is because people were bored with that, or like didn't feel inspired at all. So like I'm walking it back a bit. Where it's like I'm self-aware enough to know that there was some utility in how church has progressed since the robes. But also, I think there's plenty of context where we've swung too far in the other direction.
Yeah.
Where maybe we need to tone it down a bit.
What is, in your opinion, what is the best worst shoe that you can wear in some jeans and preach and not make it onto the account? Like just Nikes, like regular Nikes that you buy at like Kohl's, or like what's the level
the most
that disqualifies you?
People always try to trap me with this line question, and I'll never answer it because that immediately makes me an a-hole. If I say, yeah, $300 shoes, never. Are you kidding me, bro? You could have given that to the poor. But
you could literally make it up and make up a brand of a shoe, and I would not know.
I know. But what I will say is as close of a line that I can get to is the moment it becomes distracting, you should reconsider it, because the whole point is to point people to a loving God, not to yourself. Mm-hmm. And I recognize the irony that my name's on the front of a book. Like I get that, but also there's a very specific purpose for a church stage or church pulpit or whatever. And so the moment anything gets distracting or takes the attention away from God and to the guy, I think that needs to be reconsidered.
Yeah. Last sarcastic question, just because again, I'm a jerk at this time of the night. Would a coat of many colors worn by a pastor make the account, like something that fantastical?
It's come pretty close. There's been a couple of guys that have worn some Versace pieces that had.
I'm talking like that Joseph coat though, like something
just like the straight vertical lines, like in the children's Bibles.
Absolutely, yeah. like the king of like that. What's the name? Prince of Egypt. Is that the name of the animated movie? Have you seen this movie? Like that like where it's blinging on the sides, like it's rimmed in gold. Is that?
No, it would have to have a nice big brand name on it. Just if it's without a brand name, it might be worth a pass.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So So except for maybe Luke, no one else has played with my puns, and so I really appreciate that. Luke Norsworthy. I think he's down to like Austin or Abilene or San Antonio.
Oh yeah, I did his podcast a few weeks ago.
No idea. I refuse to listen to any other religious podcasts except for like the Bible Project. I don't want to.
It gets exhausting for sure.
Yeah, most of mine are finance related, and then I have one that he interviews inanimate objects, and it is literally it's a guilty pleasure.
That's peak quarantine content right there. It's like, I'm so bored. I'm going to listen to this guy interview.
So let me paint this picture for you. All right, Ben. So like, I would tell you a month ahead of time, listen, I'm going to interview that Coke can there. You are a Coke can. Do what you want with it, but we need 20 minutes and I want to script it. So here's the questions that I'm going to ask you. And so you like become this Coke can and you walk me through, I remember waking up and I was getting pressed on by this piece of metal. I was there with my brothers, and I felt light, like I was bubbly, I was energetic all inside, and I'm literally making that up on the fly. But he's interviewed like a lamppost and
that's hilarious
headphones, and it really should not be entertaining, but it is infectious. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
But you stay away from Christian podcasts or
I'm terrified that I will steal their questions.
Okay.
And lose whatever it is that's me, for fear of thinking someone else does it differently than me, and somehow that's better, if that makes any sense. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I should. I don't know. So couple just deeper questions that I always like to end with. One of them plays on the name of the show. So what, in your opinion, as a congregant of a faith community, do you feel like we need to be able to talk about in church without fear of reprobation, so that maybe the church actually begins to become a much healthier and healing place, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it? Not necessarily what should the pastor be preaching. I don't really care about that so much.
Yeah, I think in a community that is run on donations, you should be able to see finite detail about where that money is being deployed. And in most churches, that is a very uncomfortable thing that will get, and maybe I'm sure I haven't thought it all the way through, but there is this theme of wanting to be hush hush about how the church spends money, and it turns into this like, wait, you don't like, you need to just give out of obedience and trust that God is going to use the money that you gave. And I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like, you guys are spending a lot of money on stuff that doesn't matter. And if I ask about it, I'm the jerk for asking where the money that I donated is going to, bro. Because like it never stops at a certain point. Like Driscoll making $700,000 a year, nobody around was like, I don't know, dude. It seems excessive, and like it doesn't. I'm no authority to say who can and can't make, but I want to be able to at least ask. Like if the church is operating off of money that we're all donating, I think we should have a little bit of transparency, because they're not having to report any of that to anybody else.
Yeah.
And somebody recently tried to call me out on that, saying, well, they actually have to. But then I literally looked on the IRS website and said, no, there's definitely an exemption specifically for churches that says you do not have to file anything. So like there's a couple churches here that do over 100 million in donations a year. No reporting.
Looking at you, Village Church. Looking at you.
Yeah. Like no reporting. And nobody that's donating to the church is able to they'll give you a report about high level, but genuine, like there's no real way to know, I don't think, if we're outsized paying the pastor $1 million while the peons are getting paid, $9 an hour. I would love to be able to just go in and say, how much is everybody making? And then they can say, well, how much are you making? And I'll say, I'm making $82,000 a year, bro. Like, let's not be weird about this. That's one thing. And then I want people to ask about, this is ironic, but I want people to start asking about how useful social media is in the context of church. Because once you know at least some of the data about how it causes anxiety and depression in others, the fact that more churches aren't even addressing that and just saying, hey, check out our Instagram for all the info on this. You're basically saying, hey, alcoholics, come to our bar. That's extreme, but I want people
I don't know that it is. It's definitely a dopamine hit. I mean, the science is not necessarily clear, but it's pretty,
right.
It's pretty clear.
I want people to start asking harder questions about, our use of social media in a Christian context across the board. And also asking big questions about the things we choose to do as a church, especially mega churches, like all these ancillary things. I want people to be in there asking like, hey, does this align with what our end goal is? That is to point people to Jesus. And if it does not do that in some way or shape or fashion, we should really audit all of those activities. And a lot of things start with a good idea, but if you take a step back and it looks just like a production, any other kind of huge entertainment thing, it's like, why? I mean, you can get better entertainment elsewhere. Like there's a specific purpose for this. So I guess I went on a ramble a bit, but I want to be able to ask all those questions.
Yeah, no, that's great. And honestly, the social media question is one of the questions I was going to ask you, and you already answered it. Cause I think I watch my kids have an addictive personality, and
I have one.
I do as well. I don't have notifications turned on my phone except for text messages and phone calls. So hopefully there are days that I'll forget to check things.
Yeah.
And I think that's
probably
fine.
Feel better.
I don't know if I feel better, because I slightly feel guilty because some of the things I should have responded to, like emails for setting things up like this, where I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, I disconnected for a week. Is it too late to say, sure? I don't know. We'll figure it out,
but also like life somehow goes on.
Yeah.
When you take a week break.
Yeah. So last question, and then you can plug all the places that people need to be plugging and
my social media.
Yeah. Well, Barnes and Noble, buy the book. So when you try to wrap words around what you mean when you're trying to explain what God is, what is that?
Wow. Ask the question again.
So when you try to describe or put words to what you mean when you say what God is, or the divine, or whatever word you want to use, like what would you try to begin to say that? I'm aware that it's a massive question, and I give no one context for it because I don't want to.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to do my best. I would say, gun to my head with no time.
Golly.
All knowing, all powerful being that exists outside of time, that created everything and is the authority over every, I'm trying to think of like every concept of anything ever. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's fine. Nobody butchers it because they're always real answers. That's why I don't give you ahead of time notice.
That's like probably the hardest question I've ever been asked on any of these podcasts, and I've done this 2 or 3 times a day for 2 months straight.
I'm gonna ask you to send me one of those Preachers and Sneakers plaques. I'll put it behind me here.
No, I stumped the Preachers and Sneakers guy.
No, it's not about that. So so here, just a little bit of context. I have no idea if I'll leave this in or not. So like last year, the end of the year episode, I literally mixed like 50 of those answers together with no context. I deleted the names. I let my kids pick numbers. I gave every one of them numbers, and I threw them in whatever order they gave me the numbers. And then I thought it would be like 20 minutes long. Ended up being like an hour and 15 minutes long, which is also insane. I did not
just those clips,
just that answer. So
wow.
I don't, which is not what I was expecting because it doesn't feel like that long. But I got more feedback from that episode being like, this was like church today. Like hearing people describe what God is in a way that they are described, like, and it, like, I'm getting like, it legitimately was moving and very, very powerful.
That's awesome.
And I've learned a lot about the character of God from hearing what other people are trying to describe outside of the, because it's all metaphor anyway, Ben. Like it's all like, it's the best that, like, what we're talking about, a God that is expanding faster than an expanding universe that is expanding faster than the speed of light. And somehow that makes sense.
It hurts to even try to think about.
So, yeah. But I've begun to just like, I love the question. But like,
that's an interesting, like that could be a whole project. And maybe people have done things similar. Maybe that's how you were inspired. But that seems like that is still untapped. Yeah. Like the fact that you got that kind of response for that, it seems like you maybe should lean into that a little more.
Yeah, but I run 2 banks. Like I don't have any time for that. I've had people tell me similar things, and I'm like, I don't know when I'll do that.
Right? Don't you love getting good ideas from people that aren't going to help you do that good idea?
Yeah, you could do it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you're going to do great.
I totally have time for that as well.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where it came from. I want to say maybe one of my kids asked me the question, and it was really hard to adequately express, and so I just kept going. I can't swear to that, but my kids are that age where it's been.
They're
there.
asking why about everything.
Yeah, which is great. Also weird when they come home from school and they're like, but they said that you can't be a Christian unless you're baptized. And I'm like, well, then they haven't read the Bible, because pretty much everywhere Paul went, he's like, I see you in the Spirit, but you haven't. Let's get you in the water. There we go. Now we're good. But I see the work you're doing. That was definitely the Holy Spirit, and you're doing good work. So what do we do with that? And
so tell your teacher that.
Yeah. Well, no, what I ended up telling her is some people believe that, and that's okay, and it does not matter. So there's no time spending arguing about it. So just let it go.
Skill to
let it go, my dear. It's
like
totally
there's certain
fine.
Things that you don't have to die on. You don't have to die on all the hills.
Yeah. Just the Whataburger Hill.
That's right.
So where should people go to definitely, do the book thing? What should they be doing?
They should be getting off social media and buying my book. PreachersNSneakers.com is, they don't want me to promote one retailer over the other, even though there is one retailer that everyone buys books from.
Mm-hmm.
But so I will say PreachersNSneakers.com is where all the links for the book are. And if people read the book and get something out of it, that's enough for me. Like the social media thing, I think is on its way out for me, just because like it never stops, and it's a mental health minefield.
I get that.
Where I'm grateful for the platform and the opportunity to write a book. Like, it's not lost on me. I'm not ungrateful for that, but I'm just saying, in reality, I'm learning that social media is not great for me all the time. And I'm generally a happier person if I at least set boundaries with it. So I'm not going to force anybody to go to my social media, but I am there, and it's very easy to find me. I mean, if you type in Preachers and Sneakers, but if you get the book, I'm most proud of that, because it's the majority of my thoughts in a way that my brain thinks. And, you read it in a single sitting. It's a pretty approachable, I think. And it'll make you hopefully wrestle with some things, but it's not preachy, I don't think, in most places.
Yeah, it's not. So I want to also paint a bit there. So like the questions that I always try to ask are very surface level, and we can rip apart as much. Like some of my favorite stories in there, which I'll let people buy the book to read those. Like there's a story of your dad and like a Harley with the pastor. Like that was like, I stopped, put the book down on the plane. It was like, I've seen that happen, growing up in West. Like there are all these stories mixed in there that it did not talk about, because people should read it for themselves. But like I genuinely enjoy the book. I read a lot of books, but I don't enjoy them all.
Sure.
I genuinely enjoy it. I laugh. My wife's looking at me laughing, like, what are you laughing about? And I'm like, she's like, so it's basically a dad joke. I'm like, kind of.
I am a new dad, so I take that as a compliment. No, thank you though. That does mean a lot to me, because this is my first attempt at writing something meaningful, and to hear that anybody got anything out of it is an honor to me, because there's no reason this should have been a thing, but to be able to turn the sneakers thing into getting people to question deeper stuff means something to me.
Yeah. So go to the website and only wear flip-flops to church.
That's right.
And we're ready to roll.
Sell everything you have and give it to the poor, and don't post about it on Instagram.
I feel like there's a Bible verse about that.
But just don't ask me to do that.
There's America right there.
That's right.
There it is. All right, man. I appreciate your time tonight so much.
Thanks, Seth. Great to meet you.
No problem. You too. All right, so I'll stop that